Hi, and welcome to ftdrum247.com. In this series of lessons, I'm going to be showing you something I call the practical hand technique. There have been many times I've been asked by students or drummers that are either not very familiar with rudiments, or perhaps they're just not used to playing on a pad, they're only used to playing on a drum set. How can I apply some of the things that I learned on the pad onto the drum set? Now, there's many ways you can do that by applying rudiments and certain techniques that you work on strictly on a pad and then implementing them on the drums, but I'm going to try to close the gap a little bit for you by showing you something that I found very practical. It's kind of a hybrid style of holding the sticks. It predominantly uses the American grip, and it also focuses around the use of the Molar stroke. Just so I can get kind of a general starting point, I usually hold my sticks match grip, which means that they're matched. I usually hold them probably, I'm going to say, about 1/3 the way up, and my fulcrum, or the point where my stick is moving, is actually the trickiest part to explain, because in this practical hand technique method, I really like to utilize a lot of the power of my whole arm and my wrists and my fingers. There are several different ways you can hold the sticks. For example, there's the French grip, where you would hold it with the thumbs up and you use most of your fingers. There's the German grip, where you would have your palms down and you use predominantly your wrists. And then there's the hybrid style called the American grip, where your hands are kind of in the middle point, and I usually start with a fulcrum between my thumb and my first knuckle of my pointer finger, where I use the stick as a lever, and it just bounces there from that point. And then once I get that comfortable, I wrap the rest of my fingers around, and the stick pretty much goes along the first knuckle of each finger. And that fulcrum point again is right just between my thumb and my first pointer finger. I'm not squeezing too tight, just enough to allow the stick to bounce. And as you see, my palms aren't totally down and my thumbs aren't totally up. It's right in the middle. This has been a very practical way for me to play for years. However, at some point I started to realize I needed a little bit more power, and I also needed more speed for some of the power playing. So I started to develop something that I eventually found was pretty much a Molar stroke. Now, again, investigate the Molar stroke if you don't know what it is, but this is a quick little rundown. The premise of the Molar stroke is that you're using a whipping motion, usually generating the power from your arm or your elbow, starting with the stick at a very high point, and you're whipping the stick down, and as you move, the stick bounces back out. If I were to not hold the stick, for example, the stick would bounce right into the air. So, what am I doing with all that energy? Well, I'm allowing the stick to whip down like I would if I were actually using a whip. And I'm not really holding the stick in a fulcrum point, as you would commonly know by using your thumb and your pointer finger. I'm using more of a 3-point fulcrum, which is between my thumb, the side of my pointer finger, and my middle finger. And in that triangle shape, I get a lot more motion because the stick can now bounce back into the back of my hand and into the front of my webbing here. In fact, I usually use this gap in my hand here as a guide, this space between my pointer finger and my thumb. That allows the stick to come up, and as you see, when I allow the stick to come recoil back, the stick just naturally floats back there and my hand's open. So what I'm using there is just the weight of the stick and allowing it to bounce right back up into my hand. Now, what am I doing with my pinky and my ring finger? Well, a lot of times when I'm using this stroke and I don't want the stick to come up as high, or maybe I need to be ready for a next stroke, I actually end up using that as my fulcrum, the point where I'm holding the stick. It's in the back of my hand, in the pinky and the ring finger, and I get a lot of power. Almost as though I'm throwing a ball down or I'm bouncing a basketball or something. If I were to just drop my hand, that would be the same motion when I throw the stick down. As you can hear, I'm getting a loud stroke, but I'm not using a lot of effort because I'm holding the stick really loosely. So now, how do I apply this to the drum set? Well, in this lesson, I want to show you what both my hands are doing in unison, which is basically dropping the stick, allowing the stick to come back up, and then moving it more and more within my hand, allowing the stick to move, to just bounce and give me a lot of power. And notice that my pointer finger is more along the side of the stick, almost as a guide. As I get faster and faster, the grip gravitates to the back of my hand, like this. Now you may notice once I start getting a lot faster that I start using more of a pumping motion, and that's based on the Molar stroke. But that's more for speed, and sometimes I use that for ghost strokes and things. But for the most part, the idea here is that I'm allowing the stick to bounce freely, which is great for powerful playing and also for shuffles. When I was playing a lot of blues gigs and I was playing 3-4 hours a night, I had to develop a way for my left hand not to get tired playing a long night of shuffles while still playing loud backbeats. So what I developed was this practice method where I would keep my right hand shuffling. As you see, I'm mostly using a wrist and finger bounce. Which gave me a nice bouncing feeling. It was easy to play and it was an even sound. But my left hand, I needed to access a nice loud backbeat and also get those soft notes. So I would whip that loud stroke and allow the stick to just bounce the rest of the notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. This was great for shuffles, anywhere where I needed to apply ghost notes, but just somewhere where I needed a loud stroke right into a soft stroke. And all of it was really generated from that fulcrum point between my thumb, my pointer finger, and my middle finger, or allowing the stick to really throw back into my pinky and my ring finger. Now as you see, when I move from my wrists into the back of my hand, and then I go into double strokes, I still keep that space right there in my hands, and my fulcrum is still within that triangle, and the stick is just bouncing. Here's another little tip on how to make sure that you're getting a good open tone. You take just a drumstick with no tape on it or anything, and you play it against your open palm. Not too hard, but just notice the difference in the sound. Here I'm going to play it where I hold the stick really tight. Kind of a dead, thumpy sound. And now I'm going to play it open where the stick will be able to vibrate. Now you'll notice I'm not moving any faster, but the stick is now vibrating, causing a louder and more full tone that resonates more throughout the drums. So if you don't think that this sound is really a big deal, notice how much power you'll be able to get when you do the same thing on your drums. You'll be able to throw the stick really hard and get a lot of that energy right into the drum, make it vibrate, make it sing, and really not feel a shock back in your hands, which is key. So to summarize, essentially what I'm doing when I'm playing powerful backbeat music or when I'm playing shuffles or anything that requires a lot of energy, I like to keep my hands nice and loose. And whether I'm playing double strokes, single strokes, quiet, loud strokes, whatever, I try to keep the fulcrum based around this triangle in my pointer, middle, and thumb. And whenever I play any louder or any harder, I usually start to use my pinky and my ring finger to hold onto the stick and allow the stick to whip through my hands. Allow the stick to just whip down and allow the stick to jump right back in between my fingers. In the following clips, I'll be playing with the same technique on the drums. I'll be hitting really hard, but I'll be allowing the stick to vibrate and the sound to resonate, and I won't be striking so hard that the power will come back into my hand, but rather just dissipate throughout the drum, make it sing, make it really destructive, and just try to make sure that I'm playing really relaxed, so I have plenty of energy for the whole set. Thanks for checking out this lesson on practical hand technique, and make sure to check out the next few lessons on isolated right hand and left hand movement, where I'll be really showing you the differences on how to apply all this pad work onto the drum set with bands in live situations here on ftdrum247.com.